Next will be Cesar Diaz, Legislative Director for the State Building and Construction Trades.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Cesar Diaz on behalf of the Building Trades Council. Our council represents 350,000 men and women in the unionized construction trades. I'd like to say thank you to all the men and women that are here and show their support of the project. We also agree with the Bay Area Council regarding the business plan. It's very important that it lays out realistic numbers and that it provides that foundation for actually moving forward with this project. So we believe that these are real numbers. It's a high price tag. However, it's a realistic price tag and one that's based on safe assumptions as well. That being said, we are on this cusp of building high-speed rail, making that project a reality. We're about to embark on the largest public works project in the United States, the last one that California has seen in the past 50 years. Couldn't have come at a better time. The construction industry is suffering. It has suffered the brunt of the economic recession. Unemployment in the Central Valley is extremely high, as you know. Some areas are 45, 50% unemployment. Just in general, but the building trades particularly are hit. Statewide, we're looking at 35% to 40% unemployment. And areas in the Central Valley, that is far, far worse. Simply, our transportation system is overtaxed. Our population hovers 38 million. In 20 years, we're looking at 50 to 60 million people. There's no way that our economy can sustain that. In fact, businesses will lose a lot of money. And we can't depend on just simply expanding highways, expanding airports, and all of this, because it has an environmental impact. And furthermore, it actually adds to our dependence on foreign oil. So over the life of the project, as I mentioned before, we're looking at 600,000 people being back to work. 100,000 people in the Central Valley as soon as next year. We're talking about jobs for operating engineers, laborers, carpenters, cement masons, iron workers, steel workers, electricians, you name it. That's just to name a few. There will be also jobs for architects, engineers, environmental consultants, and other professionals. There in turn will be catalysts for new stores, restaurants, service industries, and that, of course, will create more jobs. After the construction is over, high-speed rail will bring another 450,000 permanent ongoing jobs to California. That's almost the entire population of Fresno. This project is an incredible job creator. From that standpoint alone, it does not make sense not to do this. We like to think of ourselves as being at the cutting edge, but in transportation purposes, we're not. We're far from it. From Europe to Asia, all across the industrial world, even some places in the third world, they're much further ahead on high-speed rail. Some critics will say that's too expensive to build, that we should just keep expanding our freeways and airports. But those are not free either. As was mentioned before, that's hovering about $170 billion price tag. And we have to have more money to actually maintain those roads and airports as well. So, of course, it's not going to come without controversy. A project of this magnitude will have controversy, as you know. Some people are opposed to certain routes. Well, that's understandable. We believe the authority has been very sensitive to those concerns, and everyone who is interested will have the possibility and chance to participate in the process as they're doing so today. So the authority has worked hard to select the best possible route, to provide the greatest benefit for the entire community while causing as few problems as possible. The governor appointed Michael Rossi, his top advisor on jobs and business development, to the board, and also Dan Richard, an expert on infrastructure and transportation financing. Those appointments show the governor is serious about bringing job creation and job growth through high-speed rail. Still, there are a few critics who say that it just won't work, that no one will use it, that it's a boondoggle. Well, that's because we are years behind, but we also can look at other countries and learn from their experiences as well. And that experience shows that in population centers from 100 to 500 miles apart, high-speed rail is the most efficient method for transportation. It also shows that high-speed rail system is profitable and can pay for itself. Air travel makes sense for longer distances, and the roads and buses are easier for short trips. But for distances between 100 and 500 miles between population center, high-speed rail is just it makes the most sense. That is exactly what we have in California, is we have the geography and the population centers for this project. We have basically 30 million people living in population centers along a 500-mile corridor. So in closing, I'd like to close with this. When President Roosevelt wanted to put people back to work building dams to create reliable water and meet electrical demand, the critics said it would never work. When President Eisenhower proposed putting people to work on the massive interstate highway system, the critics said it was too expensive. When Governor Pat Brown proposed building the world's best university system, the critics said it was too costly, it would never work. The naysayers in those times were proven wrong, and the naysayers today are wrong. We need high-speed rail, we need more efficient transportation, a cleaner environment, and less dependence on foreign oil. And most of all, we need jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Out of respect for the variety of opinions, I'm going to ask from this point forward that there not be any applause following comments, and also that's fine, but I'm going to ask we not do that. William Grindley, Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail. Mr. Grindley.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Thank you for inviting us. There are two critical variables as to whether the proposed high-speed rail system will meet its financial obligations. The first is ridership, which every financial variable is geared. I think Mrs. Alexis Card will address that a lot better than I can. But note that in every calculation our financial group has ever done, we have used the ridership numbers of the high-speed rail system, whether we believe them or not. Second major variable is the high-speed rail advocates' article of faith that high-speed rail is profitable. No system is, and let me address that. Before you, you have three documents. On top, all right, is the testimony. It was too long to give. Exhibit 1 is the official position of the International Union of Railways that says national governments build high-speed rail systems and then operate them in the name of society's good. Well, that's truly a unique European perspective, and it's completely out of sync with Proposition 1A. Exhibit number 2 shows that not only the Inspector General of Amtrak, the Congressional Research Service, and the AFL-CIO disabuse the notion of the IUR that they are profitable, but that, in fact, the three operators of the largest systems, France, Spain, and Japan, in sworn testimony in front of Congress, said, we take $2 to $3 billion a year of operating subsidies. It's highlighted in that. You don't have to believe me, just read the congressional record. Remember that $2 billion number. Since time is limited, let me give you three little presentations. The first concerns ticketing and profits. This column represents a 43-cent per passenger mile cost in Europe. We studied 6 of them. That's the average. I actually rode from Madrid to Barcelona on September the 24th for 42.6 cents a mile. This is the 81 cents. Whoa, that's shaky. This is the 81 cents. This is the 19 cents per mile for the $81 LA to San Francisco cost, right? 19 cents per mile versus 43 cents a mile. And this is their supposed profit they're going to make. Now tell me, if this column is 40% higher than that column, how are you going to make any profit? All your revenue comes from tickets. Second, all right, we're going to talk about debt here, because this thing is a mountain of debt. I want to introduce you to my little friend here, Mr. Lego Man, right? The little bit of white down here is what the feds are giving you, all right? The ICS is what the California people will pay back in interest. All of this is debt. There's no freebies in here. This little bit gets you up to the IOS North. You've built up debt to there. This gets you to the B2B portion, and this gets you through Phase 1. This gets you through Phase 2. Phase 2 gets all 6 cities, and that's what the voters were promised. But after Phase 2 gets built, the debt begins to spiral up and up and up. That's really great banking technique, but it does keep going up through the year 2055, which is what the authority has projected out to be. That is what I would call debt overhang, and here my little man's going to jump off the scale. Okay. My final piece of graphics is walk softly and carry a big stick. All right? This is to get the point across that this is a lot of money. Down here in the goal, yeah, there you go. May I stand with your permission? Down here in the goal is what your state now services as debt. All right? It's about $7.5 billion a year for $90 billion of debt already incurred by this state. By the year 2050, that will be in the range of $452 billion, this plus that, okay? Projecting at 3% growth per year, just like the authority has. And that is without high-speed rail. The red part is the layover of high-speed rail with no operating margin. Now remember, we are calculating using their numbers and giving the high-speed rail authority the benefit of the doubt they at least break even, all right? And we know they don't. So remember the $2 billion. You may ask why the little golden ring up there is not for getting married to the high-speed rail authority. The golden ring represents the pile of debt the state will incur in building this system if the federal government gives them $20 billion more. Does it seem to decrease the amount of debt much? I don't think so. Now, good banking is a great practice, and they have managed to put off the debt servicing for a long, long time. But, gentlemen, it does not create good public policy. Thank you very much.
No applause, please. Next, Daniel Kraus.
Thank you, Chair, Assembly members. Appreciate the Californians for High. I'm Daniel Kraus, Executive Director for Californians for High Speed Rail. We represent the supporters of high speed rail around the state. And we thank you for this opportunity to testify in front of your committee on the draft 2012 business plan for this project. And also we thank you for your leadership on the development of the plan. We know you've been very deeply involved in making this happen. Just to start off, we overall on the plan we applaud the professionalism, the level of detail, and the honest assessment of the challenges that the project faces. And so wanted to start there. The thing I actually want to focus on today are the assumptions used in the for the project timeline, project costs, and ridership in the draft plan. Californians for High Speed Rail is supportive of the inclusion of the current assumptions in the business plan. These assumptions are very conservative in terms of how long the project will take to build and how much it will cost. There's real value in having these types of very conservative assumptions, especially given the funding constraints we currently face as a result of the politics in Washington. That said, our organization requests that the final business plan contain a more optimistic scenario for the project timeline and costs, in addition to the existing scenario being examined. In other words, we'd like to see a range of scenarios analyzed so we are ready to fully exploit the funding environment as it evolves. The people of California desperately need the benefits of high-speed rail as soon as possible to better serve our citizens who had the vision to embrace high-speed rail already. It makes sense to analyze and prepare for the possibility that funding constraints will ease in the near future. We anticipate a tipping point soon in Washington that actually favors infrastructure spending. The political forces are already moving in this direction, illustrated by the fact that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and major labor unions are standing side by side in urging our leaders in Washington to invest in infrastructure in a massive way. Furthermore, the Tea Party-dominated anti-infrastructural House of Representatives is already falling out of favor with the American people. The specific assumptions we'd like added to the business plan include the following. Assume a 2028 completion date for full build-out in addition to the 2033. We're not, again, I want to clarify, we're not asking you to remove the conservative assumptions that are already there. We understand the original 2020 date is not feasible at this point, and we also acknowledge that the best-case scenario mentioned in the business plan of 2024 is probably not realistic. But by reducing the 2033 completion date by 5 years, which we think is reasonable if things are more optimistic, that would reduce construction time by 5 years and save on the project budget several $billion. Also, we'd like to see a reduction, another scenario that assumes an inflation rate for construction costs that's smaller than the one that's in the plan, in addition to that one. The current 3% inflation rate is extremely conservative, as other speakers have mentioned already. And current rates are around 0.6% for construction inflation. and are estimated to actually be 1.1% for the next several years. Either a reduced average inflation, say 2%, might be appropriate for this optimistic scenario, or a significant reduction in the next 5 years of the assumed rate, followed by a higher rate, might be the way to go in the final plan. As part of assuming a shorter project timeline through an optimistic funding scenario, we'd like to see the business plan investigate more thoroughly ways to accelerate the construction of the blended portions of the high-speed rail system right here in the peninsula and also in the LA region, Los Angeles region. Californians for High-Speed Rail is very appreciative of the leadership that the chair and other members of the Assembly and Senate have put into the effort in developing the blended system. We had concerns originally and some doubts, frankly, in the beginning when we heard about the blended system. But we have come to strongly support the efforts you have all initiated as the right way to move forward. Let's continue this momentum by finding ways to fund the needed improvements along the peninsula and in Los Angeles much more rapidly than the draft business plan anticipates. This may include working with local governments and NPOs to find funding sources that can be obtained in addition to the high-speed rail money that will eventually also be applied to these commuter rail corridors. If we accelerate these projects, we feel that in addition to the massive improvements to the commuter rail networks that are needed right now, private investors will see these urban projects as further commitment to high-speed rail by the state of California, and we think that would catalyze them to jump in sooner, to put their investment dollars into the project sooner than what is being currently contemplated in the draft business plan. And I just want to close a little bit on the assumptions about ridership. Again, we support the current ridership numbers as a conservative scenario. At the same time, we'd like to see a more optimistic scenario on ridership, and we actually believe this is going to be the case. The first one would be the assumption of a $3.80 per gallon gasoline expense through the whole life of the project. We don't
Daniel,
think,
I'll have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. We don't think that's realistic. Even the draft plan acknowledges that's probably not realistic. We like the final plan to also include a scenario that says a $4.52 gallon, per gallon cost as part of, that's what the MPOs use right now. And so I will wrap it up based on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next will be Elizabeth Alexis, Californians Advocating for Responsible Rail Design. You're on now?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon, members of the Assembly. I'm Elizabeth Alexis, representing Californians Advocating Responsible Rail Design. I will note that we first asked for an honest assessment of the cost of this project more than 2 years ago, so we are very happy to see one. We will say, with that said, that this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. The members of the Assembly will have a very difficult decision ahead of them. Do you fund this project, a project that is not yet ready, or do you say no? We think there needs to be a third alternative. This project needs another year to get to a place where you can make an honest assessment. You are being told, on one hand, that this is the only bite at the apple we will get, and on the other, that there will be enough support for another $55 to $75 billion of public funding. The truth must be somewhere in between. You are being asked to fund a project where you will have either committed to a $6 billion, incredibly visible white elephant, or to using every favor that you have in D.C. over the next 20 years on this project and this project alone. We'd like to see a truth somewhere in between those two. Transit experts are whispering in your ear that if this project could be just reimagined and rescued from the control of the consultants, it could cost half as much, give higher ridership, and cost less to operate. Is there validity to their criticism? We are starting to have some of the data that we need to put together a decent plan. We now have a cost estimate. We still don't have a new ridership model. The old ridership model from February 2007 has still been used to create these estimates, and we think it is highly flawed. So flawed that, yes, indeed, you might not even make these break-even numbers in the Central Valley. Right now, the current Amtrak service, which is actually quite good, yields about $20 million in revenue for the segments that high-speed rail would replicate. you have to get to at least $300 million by tripling the price of tickets to get to your break-even number. It's not obvious that this is going to happen. This is a very risky plan. You need another year to gather data. You need a new ridership model. My colleague will probably speak later about we also need an independent number. You need to have a real understanding of what is the cost of not doing this project. I think the LAO alluded to this. We don't have that number. You need to understand where the transportation needs are so dire that if you phase this so that you don't get to those parts of the state for another 20 or 30 years, they will have moved ahead with their high-speed, their highway projects, and you will have saved nothing. There is a lot of work to be done, and you know, I think we do want to, you know, thank the new board members for making sure that we have a real number on the project, but we did not expect that that was going to be, you know, yes, it's good, but it's not a good number, right? I mean, the idea is we're supposed to sit down and rethink this project, and then once you have the best project that we can come up with, then it's reasonable to ask the Assembly and the Senate whether this is a project worth funding. I do want to touch on ridership once again, and just to, you know, I cannot stress this enough. I mean, we still do not have, you do not have an independent model, and you will absolutely need that. We are happy to sit down. I think the authority is talking now about having everybody sit down in a room, but I will note that this is the first time in over 2 years that this will have happened, and it's, they want to then be able to go out for bid in January. I mean, the time frames don't match up. So I urge you, figure out a way to get another year on this, because right now it's not something that works.
Okay, thank you. And the final speaker, Aaron Fukuda, with Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability.
Thank you, Chairman and Assembly members. I'd like to give you a Central Valley perspective as we see this project moving, you know, fast-paced forward and trying to access $3 billion to make this shovel-ready. We too feel that this project is not ready to access the $3 billion nor the Proposition 1A funds. In today's world, sometimes we only get 60 days to review this document. I mean, it takes longer nowadays to close an escrow than 60 days, and the state is about ready to access upwards of several billion dollars. Let's put this in escrow. I would like to make I don't want to delve too much into the business plan. I am reading it. I've got a long ways to go. But generally speaking, everybody is right. These are huge dollars. But these are not their huge dollars. These are our huge dollars. And I think we have a say in this. And I think we need more time. I think we need that year to make that decision or more. There is truly a lack of public interest. Let's not ignore that. There's many which ways to flower this up and turn it every which way. There's no public investment right now. Let's stop there. That's the discussion today. And California is facing a credit downgrade and a budget shortfall, and this should not be our #1 priority. What I do want to talk about is to give you that Kings County perspective, and to put that in perspective, I want to explain quickly 3 things. We are the Muscle Slough tragedy, we are agriculture, and we are progressive planning. Some are going to ask, what is the Muscle Slough tragedy? Well, back in the 1880s, the Union Pacific had given land to landowners, took that land back without compensating those landowners. And on May 11th, 1880, 4 UP representatives were evicting landowners from the land, and a gun battle ensued. So what do we draw to today's conclusions? Well, back then, Governor Leland Stanford was also the president of the Union Pacific Railroad and supported their efforts. Today we have Governor Brown and the Union supporting his efforts. In 1880, they confiscated private property with Colts and Winchesters. In 2012, the authority is using misinformation, lawyers, and eminent domain. The game hasn't changed, only the methods. I have some pictures here. The authority has managed to somehow select an alternative that runs right through the Muscle Slough site. I just don't know how you miss something that big. I'm going to skip this about homes because we all know some people know my plight. They have not thought this through, and people will be hurt. I'm not going to ignore that fact. They have people today that are breaking down in anxiety attacks, putting off home improvements, and people who have not been able to sell their home, my neighbor was unable to sell her home, had to give it to her son or daughter and come up with alternative modes to figure things out. Not one phone call was placed to that homeowner to let them know the alignment was coming through their home. We are agriculture. 2010 numbers, ag was a $1.7 billion business in Kings County. $556 million of that was dairy. Just a little side fact, the most prolific producing cow in the world has ever known was cow number 289 in Kings County. Lived for 19 years, gave up 54,000 gallons of milk. Kings County views this from 30,000 feet above. We view it from the dirt up. We see that cow. We honor that cow. Here's a case example. Machado Dairy, never contacted by the authority, found out from a neighbor. Never been discussed about his impacts. His impacts are environmental and fiscal. The authority has indicated that his impact zone is 100 feet. He's hired an independent agricultural consultant to look at his impacts. There are 500 feet worth of impacts to him. On his property alone, that's 83 acres. He has allowed 5 milking cows for every acre. That is, he will have to reduce his herd by 415 cows. At an average annual production of $4,500, he will lose an average income of $1.8 million. With the economic multiplier that the UC Ag Extension uses for economic generation, the Kings County local economy will lose, by this one dairy, $6.5 million. Another big hit is transportation. The authority has ignored the fact that creating a blank corridor through Kings County forces landowners to travel upwards of 10,000 miles a year extra with equipment. That's a $9,000 impact, and there's environmental impacts due to air quality and other things. The authority has a groundwater well count of 0 that they're going to take out. CCHSRA has gone out and found 44 ag wells. Average cost, $325,000 per well. That's $14.3 million in mitigation, not included in the EIR. Kings County, we are progressive planning. Kings County has their 2035 general plan. They removed 11,000 acres from their future growth. They were nominated by LAFCO for their 2008 Project of the Year, and the Attorney General Brown, promoted this plan as a model for the rest of the state. Now the authority is ignoring the general plan, and they call it very unpredictable and irregular in their EIR. And in that process, what they're doing is...
Mr. Fukuda, I'll need to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. So CCHSRA strongly recommends you not give the authority access to the Proposition 1A funding. Stopping the access to $2.7 billion is not a failure to invest in the future. It's success in ensuring that money will be used effectively and efficiently. The authority is in no position to execute efficiently $6 billion worth of construction contracts. Rushing to make this project shovel-ready to capture $3 billion will cost us much more in the mistakes the authority will incur and has already incurred. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask my colleagues if any questions from this panel. Yeah. Yeah. Let me just ask Mr. Rossi, the issue around debt that was raised earlier. Do you have any comment on that, or?
First, I'd like to say we are interested at the authority to listening to all of the issues, raised. We've got amazingly good feedback from Elizabeth and from others. All right, but there are certain things we can't deal with, and that is inconsistencies or personal facts. The issue of profits is operating profits. The plan that we have is documented. The assumptions are documented. They've been public since November 1st. And in those assumptions, you will see, on average, $80 ticket price, $40 worth of expense. That's an operating profit. There has never been a suggestion that there is a net profit in this product. And if we're going to have those discussions, we ought to have them in a transparent, reasonable way, because it's a serious time for serious people, as Mr. Fukuda has said, and we are happy to have those discussions, but let us all agree that we have a right to our own opinions, but not to our own facts. No one has ever said, at least in the last 6 weeks, that there is a net profit here. It's an operating profit. An operating profit. And if anyone would like to go in depth, through the assumptions that drive this business plan, to get to the operating profit, I'm happy to do that. I'm ready and able. So let's please stay focused, because we do have a fiduciary responsibility here, as Mr. Pakuta said, as Alexis said, Elizabeth Alexis said, to try and get this right. So I will say again, the finances in the plan are documented, they are transparent, they are current, and they are public. We have a plan that justifies the statement that this is an operating profit organization. And I'm pleased to have that discussion with anybody, anytime. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move now to public comment. And again, if you wish to speak, well, excuse me, let me thank the panel, first of all, and to thank all of those who have presented so far to us for your comments and insight. Again, if you want to speak during public comment, I need to ask you to fill out a slip that's in the back. Based on the number of slips that I have here, we could be here for another several hours. So I will limit everyone to a maximum of 2 minutes. I will be calling you, and let me also say that if within that, if you have more information that you're not able to present in the 2 minutes, we're more than happy to take written testimony, to take emails, and my staff and staff of the subcommittee are here in the front and will be here afterwards to take any comments, or to for you to find a way to get those comments in. I'm going to call folks and ask that you kind of line up in order. I'm going to call a group at a time so that we can move immediately from one speaker to the next. This will be the first set of speakers: Cristina Fernandez, Mark Kyle, Jerry Fagundes, and Neil Struthers. So if those folks would line up and be prepared to speak, we'll start with Cristina Fernandez. And again, everyone will get 2 minutes. One of my staff will let you know when you got 30 seconds left, and he'll let me know when you cut you off.
Thank you for having me today. Good afternoon. My name is Cristina Fernandez, and I am here representing San Jose Mayor Chuck Reed. As the largest Bay Area city with nearly 1 million residents, San Jose thrives as the capital of Silicon Valley, with over 6,600 technology companies employing more than 254,000 people. San Jose has consistently supported the California high-speed rail project because we understand that our state's freeways and airports are at capacity. If high-speed rail is not built, then we will simply continue to add to the gridlock and carbon emission. This is not a viable solution for our residents or for our employers who wish to expand and continue to do business in our state. San Jose has made significant investments in our regional transportation systems, and our transportation hub at Diridon Station currently houses multiple rail transit lines as well as bus and light rail service. The BART extension into San Jose will soon add another vital connection to Diridon Station and provide much-needed service to the over 40,000 daily weekday riders. This broad access to multimodal facilities make Diridon a critical connection to the high-speed rail system. High-speed rail will stimulate between $6.9 and $8.9 billion in construction spending in the Bay Area and will generate between 100 and 128 Bay Area jobs during construction. After construction, an additional 100,000 permanent new jobs are expected to be created statewide. The City of San Jose intends to be the epicenter of this employment growth, and connecting to the high-speed rail project will help make this a reality. The City of San Jose continues to support high-speed rail for its economic and environmental benefits, but also out of necessity. We do not see another transportation solution that could adequately address our state's projected growth. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Mark Kyle, Operating Engineers Local Union Number 3. Thank you, Assemblymember Gordon, for holding this hearing today, and thank you, committee members, for being here and taking the time to do this. For the record, Operating Engineers is in support of the project. We believe the new business plan is a great start, and we welcome this kind of dialogue and look forward to the project starting next year. A couple of quick data points to consider from yesterday and today's news reports. Today, 14 countries in the world offer some kind of high-speed rail. By 2014, nearly 24 countries will be offering some form of high-speed rail. The point: high-speed rail is expanding in the developed and developing world, except for here in the United States. Second data point: Texas Transportation Institute released a report yesterday that ranked Californians among the top fuel worst drivers in the nation. 7 out of 10 of the worst places are in Los Angeles alone, the rest in the state. We meet today at the epicenter of the IT world, a place of stunning and brilliant innovation. Let's use some of that shining intelligence, address the legitimate concerns, and solve the known problems, and embrace a 21st century technology that the rest of the world has figured out is worth pursuing. And in the process, we can put Californians to work. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Jerry Fagundes, followed by Neil Struthers, followed by Frank Oliveira, followed by Jessica Zink.
Hi, Jerry Fagundes with Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. Thank you for being here to give us a chance to make our comments part of the record of this hearing today. Since the passing of Proposition 1A in November 2008 by voters of California, which was a major surprise even to the lawmakers that wrote the proposition, nothing has been sold to the voters has been held to in the plans for building high-speed rail. It is really obvious that it is not the same project after this business plan was unveiled. How can it be said that we, the voters of California, voted on this being given to us? $33 billion is now up to $98.5 to upwards of $117 billion. How can we believe that this is to be an honest cost? All projects this size that have been more than doubled or tripled in cost when they were started and worked on. If I took a plan like this and asked for financing in the private business world, I would be sent down the road without a doubt, without the monies needed for my project. Why should we as taxpayers believe what we're being told is what we will get? Please stop this boondoggle now. The monies are not here. We will never be able to pay for this project as promised.
Thank you. Neil Struthers.
Honorable Assembly members, Neil Struthers, head of the Building Trades Council, Santa Clara, San Benito counties, representing thousands of construction workers. And by the way, no other industry has been affected by this economy worse than the construction industry and the members that you see here today. So it should come as no surprise to anyone here that we support high-speed rail and that fact that we want to put people back to work. But let me tell you, the high-speed rail is more than just about putting people back to work. This is about the future of the greatest state and the greatest country in the world. And there's a reason why California is seen this way. It's because previous leaders like you up there have understood that it took a great amount of investment in infrastructure, in transportation infrastructure, transportation of water, transportation of energy, and yes, transportation of people through rail, through roads, through airports. And without these critical infrastructure systems, this state would not have produced the great wealth and the achievement that has led every other state in this country to emulate us. Let us be clear, we need to rebuild all of our transportation infrastructure in this country. We have delayed for too long. And we understand better than anyone the fiscal state of California. But now is the time to think big, not small. We built the Golden Gate Bridge during the Depression, and Lincoln built the Transcontinental Railroad during the Civil War. I guarantee you that both of these projects had their naysayers too. In fact, every great feat ever accomplished has had its detractors, and high-speed rail is no different. What is different that you as leaders are now faced with deciding the future of California, and we have to decide whether it will be a footnote or that the chapter, or it will be the chapter that records a turning point in California's reemergence as the greatest state and the greatest country in the world. In closing, I'd like to say that we have an opportunity to stimulate California's economy by putting people back to work and to bring our transportation system into the 21st century. And let us not fall victim to those who can't see beyond tomorrow or those with an agenda based on self-interest. Leadership requires making tough decisions, and all of us here today support you as leaders to make those tough decisions and support high-speed rail. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next set of speakers will be Frank Oliveira, Jessica Zenk, William Knack, Marion Lee, and Charlie Lavery.
Thank you for allowing me to address you today. What I've heard today was vision. I heard different panels explain the vision that Prop 1A brought us. 800 miles of track, fast trains, rapid transportation of people, an expanding economy for a cost of $33 billion, combined with a mere $10 billion, $9.95 billion investment by the taxpayers of the state of California. An earth-friendly transportation system that would solve a lot of our problems. It would prevent us from building additional freeways and runways. But what I've seen since I've been looking at this is the reality. And the reality is, up until 3 weeks ago, this system, this 800-mile system, was going to be, and all these benefits were going to be accomplished by with a mere $43 billion. It increased. Now we're being told, 3 weeks later, that 2/3 of this project will cost $100 billion. The price has increased. We have transportation needs that came out in a report this week. Everybody's read it. It's going to cost $500 billion just to fix what we have. $100 billion is less, or is more than the state of California spends in a year. Are we going to invest in a project that no longer is Prop 1A in any way, form, or fashion? An entire state year's budget. I'm asking you to pink slip the California high-speed rail. It's time for a good plan to get good leadership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jessica Zenk.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Zenk, the Transportation Policy Director for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is a member organization with 350 of the Silicon Valley's leading companies and institutions, and we represent them on public policy issues. I want to start by saying thank you to Chair Gordon for holding these hearings in Silicon Valley. I think the dialogue has been very helpful, and thank you for the High Speed Rail Authority for this update to the business plan, which I believe, as many have said, is a major step forward. It's a sound plan, much more realistic business model than we've seen in the past. I also appreciate the efficiency and the sensitivity to concerns that's shown in the adoption of the blended approaches here and in the South. That said, as a point of information for the group, this project that's laid out in the business plan is not the same project that our membership did vote to support years ago. We're a member-driven organization, so just as you are studying and deciding whether you will continue to support it, we are doing the same over the next coming months. And I want to thank, again, the authority for coming and speaking to our organization, as they plan to in December and January, to help us sort out what our position will be moving forward. So thank you for the dialogue today.
Okay, thank you. William Knack, followed by Marion Lee, followed by Charlie Lavery, followed by Rosemary Enthoven.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Gordon and other honorable Assembly members of the California Assembly Budget Subcommittee. My name is William Knack, and I'm here representing the Building and Construction Trades Council of San Mateo County, with a membership of 14,000 of the highest skilled union craftsmen and women in the construction industry today. High-speed rail is of great importance to the Building Trades Council and our members. Construction unemployment in California is at 30%. More than 3 times the national unemployment rate. 300,000 construction workers have lost their jobs since 2008. High-speed rail in California will generate hundreds of thousands of good-paying construction jobs with health benefits and pension plans. In addition to the thousands and thousands of jobs that high-speed rail brings to California, high-speed rail will help reduce the need to dramatically increase the size of our airports in San Bruno and San Jose by giving additional opportunities to people traveling between Northern and Southern California. There is interest by private investors, as stated by Assemblymember Kathleen Galgiani at the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association conference held on November the 6th, 2011. Over 1,100 companies expressed interest in participating in California's project, and 22 companies expressed interest in helping finance our system. We've been talking about high-speed rail in California for decades. As requested, the high-speed rail authorities developed a real plan of action that starts next year. It is time to start putting California construction workers back to work and have California start benefiting from a better transportation system. And I thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Okay, thank you. Marion Lee.
Good afternoon. My name is Marion Lee. I'm the Acting Director for the Caltrain Modernization Program. I'm here today speaking for Mike Scanlon, who is the Executive Director of Caltrain. It was very important for him to be here, but he was out of town on business. To start, we would like to thank 3 elected officials, Assemblyman Rich Gordon, Senator Joe Simidian, and Congresswoman Enna Eshoo, for their leadership in challenging us to find a Caltrain and a high-speed rail solution in the peninsula that makes sense. They asked us to advance a blended system for the peninsula. In essence, the blended system is a change from what was originally envisioned for the peninsula. What was originally envisioned was a 4-track segment which involved significant increase in adding new tracks and encroachments outside of the Caltrain right-of-way, resulting in major local impacts. In pursuing the blended system, what we are essentially trying to do is see if we can share the existing infrastructure with high-speed rail to the greatest extent possible. What this does is it minimizes impacts outside of our rail corridor. We are very pleased to see that the blended system concept is in the high-speed rail business plan, and this well coincides with our completed analysis, which was technical, and it showed that a blended system in our corridor was operationally viable. Having the blended system concept and principles in the high-speed rail plan provides a solid framework for us to continue local dialogue and move forward. This does not mean that we will not have difficult discussions to be had between Caltrain and high-speed rail and the local communities, but it puts us on common ground to identify mutual interest in electrifying the corridor. We look forward to working with high-speed rail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charlie Lavery, Rosemary Enthoven, Stacy Mortensen, and Emily Cohen.
Afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Charlie Lavery. I'm a business rep with the Operating Engineers Union. We represent surveyors, crane operators, heavy equipment operators, and test and inspection techs. I'm out in the field every day with our people, working with California's greatest asset. It's Californians. I get hundreds of calls a week from those Californians looking for work. We've got the skilled people to do this job. Let's turn that asset into the infrastructure we need. We need high-speed rail, we need jobs, and we need them now. Thanks.
Rosemary Enthoven. Then Stacy Mortensen, followed by Emily Cohen, followed by Carl Jones and Monica Almendrez.
Good afternoon. I oversee the ACE trains that operate from both the Central Valley and in the urban Bay Area. I'm also a 5th-generation Californian. My great-grandparents came over here in the covered wagon and in the bellies of cargo ships from Denmark, and we're pretty scrappy people. We've been dairymen, lumberjacks, national park rangers, which has made for some interesting dinner conversations, family dinners. But since my family has been here, we've always viewed California as a great place for innovation and agriculture combined. They're not necessarily ideal bedfellows, but it's what allowed California to reach its prominence in the world. But over the last couple decades, we've slipped in prominence in both areas, and I've found myself at this point thinking about leaving the state, and my grandparents would kill me if I did. But I just find myself thinking, well, maybe there's a better place because we've just slipped. But I think we can reestablish ourselves as a world leader. And I think if we renew our commitment to farming and agricultural commerce and we invest in a new international industry such as high-speed rail, we can regain that place. But it's not going to happen if we parcel the money out to the urban areas. It's only going to happen if we put the money into the central spine where we get an unprecedented federal $3.5 billion. And I know there's a lot of talk about let's move that money into something else, but no matter how hard we try, that's not going to happen. So I think in my vision of California's true capabilities, we don't need the federal handout. We need the federal hand up, but I believe with some of the innovative financing ideas, there's ways we can build that industry like we've built industries before, and we didn't need the federal government to fully fund it. The private sector will come when we have our act together, and we've got a good plan, and I think we're well on our way to that. As a former traffic engineer and someone who likes to drive cars, motorcycles, tractors, anything with wheels, with dismay, I tell you, I see a shift. People's preferences are changing. People are wanting to take the train. They want the time to be productive. They want to be connected to information, and you can't do that driving your car. So I'm in support of this business plan. I think there's more discussion to come, more details to work out, but I'd hate to see us stop and go backwards.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Emily Cohen, followed by Carl Jones, then Carl Jones, followed by Monica Almendarez, Leonardo Hochberg, Ben and I'll figure that one out in a minute.
Say when. Okay, my name is Carl Jones. I'm a resident of Palo Alto. My comments are somewhat off the cuff here. I hope they make sense. First, it was a pleasure to actually see the members of the authority. I think it's very important for all of us, certainly for me, to see people behind the reports and whatever they're doing, and I appreciate the hard job that they're doing. I don't envy you your position. Second, two things are important to me. One, projections of ridership, and the other is funding. So much depends upon the ridership, and my experience, albeit limited, is that when ridership does not reach the levels at which it was expected to be, then we get the, well, if only we did this, that would improve the ridership. And from what I've seen, that leads us down this path to, oh, we'll spend a little more here, or we'll do a little more here, we'll extend a little more there, and plans tend to go out of the water at that point. That's really crucial. Another point I'd like to make is about the initial segment being built, the 130-mile segment out in the Central Valley. There's a story about Huey Long when he was the governor of Louisiana. He wanted a road built. It was going to cost X. The legislature gave him 1/2 X, and so he built the road 1 mile with a separation of a mile, and another mile with a separation of a mile. It was totally useless. He got his money. So let's make sure that if we build this segment out in the Central Valley of 130 miles, then is it going to be able to stand alone? Because if it isn't, then we are in fact committing ourselves to the rest of the money to connect it everywhere else. And finally, I voted for the bond measure when it came out. Then I found out about how the routing was going to be and the routing coming up the peninsula. And had that been stated at the outset, I would not have voted for it. Thank you very much. So I have some homework to do, and that is to understand what the blended route is. But certainly the impact on the peninsula as was originally designed was just totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica.
Hello, my name is Monica Almendarez, and I'm an apprentice with Operating Engineer, Local 3. And this will benefit especially women in the construction industry to have jobs, and so we could support our families. And that would be great if even if we have to wait another year to for this project to begin, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Leonardo Hochberg, Ben Annixter, I believe, John Messina, Bruce Donahue, and Gary Patton.
Hi, I'm Leonardo Hochberg, and I'm a Palo Alto resident for the last 7 years, and I'm here representing myself, and more importantly, I'm here representing my 11-month-old son, who I think really needs to be represented here. I've seen a lot of negativity towards the high-speed rail project, and I can only say that the best statement about this has been said by a stand-up comedian from San Francisco named Kamal Bell, who I will quote. He said, "Voting against high-speed rail is like voting against the future." And I think it's really important to keep that in mind when we have discussions and we have arguments that start getting very nitpicky, when the real purpose of those arguments is really to kill this project. I recently was I rode the high-speed rail from London to Paris with my 11-month-old, well, he was 8 months old at the time, and it's a fantastic experience. The only part of it that I didn't enjoy, which we won't face here, is I couldn't speak French, so I couldn't talk to and order, hot water to make his bottle. But I will say this. Last summer, I had a discussion with a retired state senator from the 70s or 80s, I don't remember exactly, and we were talking about this project, and he was very much against it. And I told him, and I'm telling you this now because you're currently in the government, I said, because you did not lead 30 years ago, we have the transportation problems that we have today. And if you do not lead today, we will have the same transportation problems and worse in 20 or 30 years if you do not build this project. And that's going to affect me, it's going to affect my son, but some of you who may, I'm sorry to be blunt, if you will not be alive in 20 or 30 years, you should not really be fighting against this project because it's going to affect people like me. Okay? I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's the reality. All right, so the time is now to make this project happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time is up. Ben Annixter, John Messina. Ben Annixter. Then John Messina. Nope, okay. Bruce Donahue, followed by Gary Patton, followed by Dale Luck.
Thank you for listening. I have a few minor and local comments. As with the dairy farmer in the valley, it seems like there are a few things that have been overlooked that could have a relevant ground-up view. One is the right-of-way and Union Pacific. In the EIR, it firmly established that Caltrain owned the right-of-way, and that was the basis of a comparison for the alternatives, I believe. I've been told that Union Pacific actually has an exclusive inner-city easement that excludes high-speed rail from using this right-of-way without purchasing it or purchasing the whole segment of the railroad. It seems like there needs to be a transparent discussion or at least a comment somewhere in a report or a new EIR that analyzes this fact. I've been told it's a fact. Okay. Second is that Caltrain has done a lot of extensive improvements, capital improvements, and has recently gone under a number of great cost reductions and level of service reductions. I'm told that there's no level of service or cost impact evaluation by Caltrain, and that high-speed rail could easily put them out of service, eliminating the local good service Caltrain provides. And lastly, the notion is that the electrical powering of the system evidently is a unknown in the EIR. There is going to be extensive lines, generation plants. I'd like to see the EIR or some document address the actual impact of what this is going to do, and is it cost effective in terms of the green criteria. Again, thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Gary Patton, followed by Dale Luck. Followed by Gene Wilkie.
Mr. Chairman and members, Gary Patton. I'm an attorney and am here, among other things, to provide the subcommittee with a letter from the Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail. I also represent Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability, and you've heard from them, and they are largely community members, business people, and farmers in Kings County in the Central Valley. Just let me make this observation. As Elizabeth Alexa says, you are being jammed on this project, and it is going to be a terrible position when the legislature and the governor are going to be asked early next year to decide whether or not to invest ultimately something like $8 billion, $6 billion certainly, in a project which admittedly is not going to provide any high-speed rail service at all, and which is going to proceed according to the Huey-Long plan. Build it there, and maybe then somebody will have to step up and give you some additional money, because in fact, it's going to destroy existing farms. It's going to undermine the agricultural economy. It's going to be growth-inducing. It's going to disrupt current Amtrak service. And the future of high-speed rail, which could be of such promise to this state, isn't this project that's seeking funding from your subcommittee and the Assembly and the State Senate and the legislature and the governor. Please don't get jammed. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Luck, followed by Gene Wilkie. Dale Luck. Going once, going twice. Gene Wilkie. Okay, I'll hold that one then. And the last name's Chappelle. I'm not sure about the spelling of the first name. Could be Karen. Karen Chappelle. So then Karen Chappelle, followed by Gerald Cawthon, followed by Charles Volz.
My name is Karen Chappelle. I am not too... Can you hear? Am I close enough? Okay.
Just speak as loud as you can.
This is the biggest bait and switch ever. We were given the option of a $33.6 billion train that would cost $9 billion in taxpayer bonds, and somehow the rest of the money was going to come, but it was only going to be $33.6 billion. Now it's almost $100 billion if you take the low end of their estimates, and well over $100 billion if you take the high end of their estimates. It goes through the farming country. It destroys farms. There is absolutely no reason they couldn't have built it down Interstate 5, where there is plenty of room. It's nice and straight, and it wouldn't destroy anything. Don't know why they did it that way. They appear to be totally stuck on doing it, wandering through Kings County, Tulare County, Fresno County, the whole bunch of them. This is appalling. How many children are not going to get educated because we're spending money on a high-speed train that we can't even finish? How many people are going to starve because we don't have the social services, because we spent the money on the train? And why can't we get the authority to back off, look at their plans, make a straight line, leave the ends to be fixed by what you call blending, what you call picked up by the local services? We could spend the money on fixing the roads. We could spend the money on local commuter services, which wouldn't hurt anybody, and it would help a lot of people. That's where most of our traffic is. Thank you.
Thank you. Gerald Cawthon, followed by Charles Volz.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Gerald Cawthon, and I'm a resident of Oakland. Came down here to talk today. Just a couple of things. The business plan to me seems like an improvement. Things seem to be a little bit more closer to reality than they were. However, there's still a long ways to go, particularly with respect to realistically phasing and packaging this system in accordance with the realistic assessment of where the funding is. It doesn't, I think these phases are too big. I don't think it makes much sense to be talking about a $30 billion system with a $3 billion federal commitment. One example I'd like to point out is that even today, and in the plan, there are comparisons made between the ridership drawing power of this California system of the future and today's systems overseas. Well, as I think everybody knows, California motorists today are heavily subsidized. We pay 50 cents a gallon for gasoline taxes. In Europe, they pay $4 plus road rate charges. And in Japan, I happen to know the combined effect is about $12 a gallon. So if you're talking about $8 or $9 or $12 a gallon versus $3 a gallon, it's not quite accurate to say we should be looking at those riderships as a basis for the riderships here. And one last point, I understand why the Rail Authority is focused on high-speed rail, but I think for you and for the Senate and for the governor, the real question is, how do you make the best use on behalf of rail development for everybody in the state with the funds you have and over what period of time. I have some, I want to send you something that I got when I lived 3 years in Frankfurt about how they developed their rail system there. I think it might be useful to you. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charles Volz.
Good afternoon, Assembly members. I'm Charles Volz. I am a member of the Board of Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail, but my comments today are my own. I want to commend the authority for its improved business plan. That's progress, but it's a two-edged sword in one sense. It really shows the gross inadequacy of the two prior business plans and the misleading and challenging things that it caused for everybody. And that leads to an unanswered question that I have to direct to the legislature and the members here today, and that is that how was it that our state legislature disregarded the clear warnings of reputable experts with high-level experience in rail who accurately predicted high-speed rail's cost explosion, its grossly inflated ridership projections, etc., etc. There are several of them, but I refer particularly to the testimony of Joseph Ranich before the Senate committee, the 182-page report of the Reason Foundation, and the comments of Richard Tolmack, president of the California Rail Foundation. I've provided your staff with the details of that testimony. It's a soul-searching question for the legislature, because if their testimony had been credited, this project would not have been funded. It would not have gotten through the legislature. And you have to look back and say, how was it that we didn't believe them and we believed the hype? And how can we make sure that that doesn't happen again? And the answer is provided by the leading professor who studied mega projects, Professor Brent Flyvberg, who is now from Oxford University, who's written extensively on the subject, and his advice is simple: get independent experts. You cannot rely on the promoters of a project for the information. And that is your challenge. It's due diligence for the legislature. You are our fiduciaries, and we're counting on you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. John Messina, I apologize. I temporarily lost your slip, but I found it.
Wouldn't be the first time I've been lost. Chairman, one of my biggest concerns is that they're using France and Japan as financial models for this project. They picked two countries that are virtually on the brink of financial collapse. And I suspect they got there through projects like this one and boondoggles like this. Whoever's claiming that this 130 miles in the Central Valley is going to pay for itself has never bothered to go out there and look at how few people there actually use public transportation, buses or trains, to get from one of those cities to the other. They don't. They drive, and they're going to continue to drive. Why are they going to get on that high-speed rail, get to a station, and then hire a taxi to take them where they're going? I mean, this is just not thought out at all. San Jose did the same thing with some of its stuff. It set up a high-speed rail to nowhere. Anyway, and the last point is